Close your eyes and think back to your childhood. What were your favourite shows? What was on your local network each week that you couldn't wait to get home to watch? If you didn't make that 5 p.m. time slot, you had to pray for a rerun. Or if you grew up in the UK like me, you would watch it on +1 on Sky. Or specifically Instant Star for me, which I vividly remember being in the car having an utter meltdown when I realised I wasn't going to get home in time from school to watch the latest episode. It could have been an exaggeration, but at the time it felt quite monumental. I'd say it almost shaped me as a person. There was a sense of community in the late 90s, early 2000s, because everyone was watching TV at the exact same time. Everyone discussed the same mystery and everyone waited together for the very next episode. Now you might binge a show in one day and someone else might binge it 6 months from now. It feels like we've lost that communal experience when it comes to television. Why is that? Well, TV has changed dramatically since the era of 24 episode seasons with weekly releases, that it's hard to figure out when the shift actually happened and why no one is speaking about it. Before we explore the shift though, let's first explore the golden age of long seasons. There are times you might get recommended a show by a friend that came out in the 90s or the 2000s. You'll click on it and reel back in horror when you find out there's not only 8 seasons but 24 episodes per season. It's unfounded in 2026 that you would ever watch a show that long. But you might watch. You might question the quality, realizing it's not resembling a Hollywood blockbuster, and learn that there is not just one storyline threading through the show, but many episodes are actually self-contained. Perhaps if you're watching a fantasy sci-fi horror, you'll encounter the monster of the week. The good old days, specifically the X-Files.
No one remembers your name when you're strange, when you're strange.
This may sound like a foreign language to the younger generation that grew up in the era of streaming, but God, do I miss the glory days. It was quality. Now, Friends is a prime example of the golden age of long seasons. The show ran for 10 seasons with an average of 24 episodes per season. I mean, considering the show was about a group of friends that lived in the same apartment block, it's hard to think, how do you keep coming up with new and interesting ways to tell the story? Well, the answer is this. We fell in love with the characters. It was as simple as that. Many episodes were filler, only there for character development, which is not a flaw. I love a filler episode. The plot holes were gaping. You had Christmas episodes, Thanksgiving episodes, all of which did not aid in furthering the story, but they were just simply there to entertain us. Ultimately, and this is what has been missing in television in recent years, it was fun. Friends understood something that television seems to have forgotten. Spending time with characters can just be the story. That's it.
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
Lost is yet another example of long season television. Now, this, I should preface, is my favourite television show of all time, and I will not accept any slander towards it. If you say you hate the show, didn't understand the ending, it was confusing, you just didn't understand it. That's it. Simple as. I will not sit here and explain. I mean, I probably will. I probably will at some point make a video just about Lost and why it frustrates me that people don't give it the credit it deserves. It's quality television. The best show. Anyway, I digress. Now, this was a 6-season show with an average of 20 episodes, with the amount of episodes dropping off towards the later half of the show. It follows a group of plane crash survivors that crash land on a deserted island, which actually isn't so deserted. They learn something else is on the island with them, and maybe other people, and they realise very quickly no one's coming to save them. Also, there's a lot of other mysteries going on the island. We do go places that you don't quite expect, including different times. There is time travel. Anyway, again, no slander. I won't accept it. It's quality. It is a mind-bending show, and at times it is utterly baffling with so many plot twists that some people struggle to keep up. I understand. Lost is interesting though, because unlike Friends, almost every single episode pushes the story forward. Yet despite being one of the most serialized shows ever made, it still found time for character-focused episodes. side stories, and detours that very likely would be cut from television today. Now, a familiar topic of conversation, considering I just made a video on this, Once Upon a Time.
I just had to stop you. I have no interest in cleaning tongue marks off my mirror.
Now, this is a slight outlier in these examples, and this is due to the fact that this show is not entirely old and it's not entirely streaming. It almost exists in an in-between period. It's a show that ran for 7 seasons with 22 episodes on average. We won't discuss season 7 though, it was horrendous. There were villains of the week, filler episodes, side quests, and heavy character-focused episodes. However, you also had season-long mysteries, a larger mythology that you had to stay on top of, otherwise you were utterly lost. I mean, there were times I had to Google what the hell was going on, because there's so many different characters and variations of the same characters. One season there's 2 evil queens, there's 2 Captain Hooks. I don't know which is which. So yes, there were times I had to Google what I was watching.
You tried to destroy me because you couldn't stand looking at the darkness. Well, I can't stand looking at the light.
All that being said, it's quite comical that you would get lost watching this, considering it was from the creators of Lost, which I think is maybe why I enjoyed this show so much. You could say that Once Upon a Time was the bridge between the 2 eras of television. Ultimately, the takeaway here is this. Shows weren't designed to be consumed over the course of a weekend. They were designed to spend months with you. If you watch any of the shows I listed, whether it be Friends, Lost, or Once Upon a Time, then you spent far more time with them than you do any modern television show. This created attachment. You felt like you knew the characters. You wanted to live in the places. I mean, when I watched Lost, I thought, I wouldn't be too mad if my plane crashed on the island. Which actually, saying those words makes me sound utterly mental. So I take those words back. I've changed. I've grown. My frontal lobe develops. I believe, anyway. Some of those beloved episodes of television are where very little happens. These are often referred to as filler episodes, like I've said. They are self-contained stories that don't have any real consequence for the most part. But what they do is make you more attached to the characters. Without these, big moments don't hit quite as hard. Now, what a lot of people don't realise though is that at the time, networks needed long television shows. A show that has a lot of episodes running each week ultimately meant there were more ads, there were more viewers, and there was, of course, more money. It didn't need to be artistic because the reason was business. Simple as that. Syndication was everything during this time, and this is something that younger viewers might not understand. To be honest, I heard the word for many years and didn't understand what it meant. Way back when, a show wasn't truly valuable until it reached 100 episodes, roughly. And this was simply because it could rerun endlessly. There is a reason Friends is still on television 20 years later. Networks weren't building shows for single viewing, they were building a library. The goal wasn't just to get you watching tonight, it was to get you watching 5 years from now. The show generated billions because it became rerun television. Networks ultimately wanted volume, not prestige, just volume, because money. Now let's talk money, considering we're on the topic and I want to keep doing this. People assume modern TV that is on streaming services right now is automatically better because it has a larger budget. However, when you don't have money, you have to find other ways to keep people watching. Once Upon a Time is a prime example. It couldn't solve every problem with CGI, huge action sequences, or even movie level effects. So instead, it relied on questionable green screen, quality dialogue, character development, but most importantly, the storytelling. The budget restrictions ultimately shaped the show. It gave it charm. And there's a pun in there somewhere. I'm just not that quick on my feet right now. There's a charm, there's Prince Charming, whatever, you fill in the blank. Before we delve into modern television, I want to finish this section on a final point. In the 90s and early 2000s, TV wasn't trying to be movies. It was trying to be television. And somewhere along the way, we decided that just wasn't good enough for some reason, with every show now being 8-hour movies, essentially. This distinction between cinema and television has ultimately just disappeared. Now, it's hard to remember when streaming services took over our lives and our bank accounts. It just feels like it's been the norm forever, and I don't even like to look at how much my bank suffers because of every streaming service I have, most of which I don't even use. I think back to the early 2000s when Netflix was a DVD rental mail service. Does everyone remember that? What a weird time. That feels like a fever dream, actually. And what was the other one? Love Film? something like that. Were they the same thing? I don't know. You would get a DVD in the mail, you'd watch it, you'd send it back. This ultimately spelled the end of Blockbuster, because for some reason people just didn't want to go and leave their house anymore to go rent a film and then return it physically the next day. Ultimately, that is the mentality people have now. Why should you have to wait to watch it when you can have it at the click of a button in your home, on your device, on any device, your phone, your iPad, your laptop, your TV? It's all right there. All episodes waiting to be consumed. Streaming didn't just change how we watch television, it changed what television was. It created something we hadn't experienced before, which was the age of binge culture. I guess buying a TV show box set back in the day was the equivalent, but typically you would have watched the show before you committed to buying the box set. In most cases, I would assume. For the most part, streaming services release new shows all in one go. All 10 episodes handed to you on a platter, as long as you're paying £10 a month for the streaming service itself. Probably more now. We don't want to know. No one looks. You didn't have to wait to find out what happened to a character, how the major conflict got resolved. There was no stressing for a week to see how the show would resolve itself. You could find out in one day if you were willing to sit and binge the entire thing to avoid the inevitable spoilers that would be plaguing the internet. With the era of streaming and not needing to fill weekly network schedules over months and months, television has increased their budgets, relying more on movie-level production over 8 to 10 episodes, landing bigger actors and leaning into movie-level effects. Gone are the days of the questionable CGI monsters and filler episodes, and instead every episode is like a mini-movie, all pivotal to further the story. Compare an episode of Once Upon a Time to an episode of, let's say, House of the Dragon, if you would like. Most audiences would laugh in the face of Once Upon a Time if you were to present them side by side. The CGI is night and day. Once Upon a Time had a far cheaper budget, and it was apparent through the special effects. I mean, there's a dragon in the show that looks like it came right out of a cartoon, but that is the charm of it. It is a show about fairy tale characters. Leaning into the silliness and the absurdity makes sense, and it makes you enjoy it and appreciate it more. It's entertainment, it's fun, it's silly. Whereas House of the Dragon at times feels like you could walk into your screen and be in that world. It feels real, it feels lifelike. And that's where the problem begins. If every episode is expected to look like a blockbuster film, then producing 22 episodes becomes near impossible. More money goes into visual effects, bigger actors, larger sets, and longer production schedules. What used to take months to film then ultimately takes years to film. The result is that modern television has become more expensive than ever before, but in order to justify these costs, seasons have become shorter. Every scene has to matter, every episode has to move the plot forward, and somewhere along the way, television stopped allowing itself to breathe. The irony is that audience spent years complaining about filler episodes, only to discover that what we really missed wasn't the filler, it was the time. Time to get to know characters, time to explore the world, time for stories that existed simply because spending another hour there was enjoyable. The real question is, though, do we actually have better television now in 2026? Yes, we have better productions and more cinematic storytelling, but we have far less character development, less time with the characters, and overall less impact because we're just not spending enough time in the world of the show. The side stories and quests only further the character development, but that doesn't really exist anymore. Once the show is over, we move on. I, for one, miss existing in the world for 150 episodes and leaving the show wishing I was still there. Now, the question is, will 20-plus episode seasons ever return? I'm not entirely sure. We still have the likes of sitcoms and then Grey's Anatomy, but it's a rare breed in the era of modern television. Grey's is a show that began in the early 2000s and successfully managed to retain its core audience. But the economics have changed. Hollywood actors now cross over between film and television seamlessly. Budgets have ballooned and production value has essentially reached a point where they are 8-hour movies. It would be near impossible to return to long-form television that would likely take 2 years to make. And maybe that's fine. Television today is arguably more cinematic than it has ever been, but I can't help but feel like we have lost something along the way. That being time, like I said, time to sit with the characters, time for weird episodes, time for stories that existed simply because spending time with the characters in that world was enjoyable. Pure escapism. Shows like Lost, Friends, Once Upon a Time, even Buffy weren't asking you to binge them on a weekend. They were asking you to come back next week and the week after and the week after. And you did. Television didn't get worse. It just became something different. The question is whether we left something important behind in the process. And ultimately, I think we did. Let me know what you think. Do you miss long season television? What is your favorite television show? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.